What if I told you one of the world's most valuable vegetables is deliberately grown in complete darkness? Or that some of our most popular vegetables actually produce better harvests with less sunlight? For decades, we've been told more sun means more food. But what if we've been gardening backwards? Most gardeners are fighting for sunlight they'll never have. South-facing walls, open fields, perfect exposure. That's what every book tells you to chase. Most of the big commercial lettuce fields in the US are in places like California and Arizona, where the sun barely ever lets up. And then we act surprised when the lettuce turns bitter and bolts at the first heat wave. Meanwhile, people with cool, shady yards keep saying they can't grow lettuce because they don't have enough light. Lettuce is almost always grown wrong, and the sun is the reason. The moment it gets too much heat and light, it bolts. Instead of staying low and leafy, it throws up a tall stalk, rushes to flower, and the leaves turn bitter almost overnight. Move lettuce into partial shade and the opposite happens. The soil stays cooler. The plant stays low and leafy. The flavor stays mild and juicy for much longer. 3 or 4 hours of indirect light are enough. And if you keep picking the outer leaves instead of ripping the whole plant out, one head can feed you for weeks. So that dark corner you've been ignoring might actually be the best lettuce bed you own. Lettuce in shade almost makes sense. It looks fragile, it feels delicate. But the story gets stranger when you realize one of history's toughest vegetables was built for the gloom. Spinach. Spinach began in ancient Persia. It traveled east and west along trade routes into Asia and into Europe because it did one job better than almost anything else. It produced food when light was weak and the air was cold. Early spring, late autumn, short days, low sun. That was its season. Kings ate it. Doctors prescribed it. It was the green people counted on when their pantries were running thin. Modern gardeners keep making the same mistake. They plant spinach in full summer sun, watch it shoot up, turn bitter, and disappear, then blame themselves. But the plant is only doing what it has always done, escaping the heat as fast as possible. Give it what it actually evolved for: cool soil, steady moisture, a few hours of filtered light, and it quietly becomes one of the most reliable crops in the shadiest parts of your yard. Dark leaves, dense flavor. A bed that keeps giving long after the sunny rows have burned out. Not everything needs more sunlight. Sometimes the trick is giving it less. Leafy greens thriving in shade is one thing. But what happens when you go underground? Most people will tell you root vegetables demand full sun. Carrots especially are supposed to need blazing light from dawn to dusk. The truth is more complicated. Carrots will grow just fine in partial shade. They take a little longer. They might not reach the same size as their sun-baked cousins. But the trade is worth it. Cooler soil and slower growth give their sugars time to build. Instead of rushing to maturity under harsh light, the plant settles in, deepens its roots, and sweetens up. And the carrots we know now aren't even the originals. The first cultivated carrots were purple, yellow, and white. They were pulled from cool valleys and partially shaded slopes, valued as much for medicine as for food. What mattered wasn't endless sunlight beating on the leaves. It was loose, stone-free soil and steady moisture around the roots. 3 or 4 hours of light on the foliage, a deep, soft bed beneath, and suddenly that too shady strip becomes a carrot patch that nobody expects. If shade can make lettuce juicy for much longer, and spinach stay in leaf and carrots sweeter, then the most surprising plant of all is the one that only shows its best side when you take the light away completely. Chicory. Few plants have lived as many different lives beside humans as this one. Ancient Egyptians grew it. Romans used its bitter leaves as a way to cleanse after heavy meals. During coffee shortages across Europe, people dug up its thick roots, roasted them, and brewed them as a stand-in for coffee. A habit that never really disappeared in some places. But the most remarkable chapter in chicory's story starts in the dark. In 19th century Belgium, farmers stored chicory roots in cool underground cellars. At some point, someone noticed that those stored roots began to push out new buds, not the wild, leathery leaves from the field, but tight, pale heads packed together like little torches of ivory. Those became what we now call Belgian endive. The recipe was almost the opposite of gardening as we usually imagine it. Grow the chicory once in the field, dig up the roots, then hide them in total darkness and wait. No sun, no lamps. Any light at all would turn the heads green and harsh. In that darkness, the plant used the energy it had already stored to build something entirely new. A second crop, delicate, crisp, faintly bitter, and valuable enough to become a sought-after vegetable on restaurant plates and in markets. It is one of the very few vegetables on Earth that is deliberately grown without sunlight, a technique that began by accident in Belgian cellars, then spread because the result was simply too good to ignore. If a plant can become more valuable by never seeing the sun, what else have we misunderstood about shade? For decades, garden advice has drilled one message into our heads: find the sunniest spot and start there. Full sun became the default. Anything less was treated as failure. But people didn't always think that way. Before irrigation systems and perfect lawns, they used whatever land they had. Bright, exposed spaces were for some crops. The edges of the woods, the north side of the house, the ground beneath trees, those were for others. Some plants were made for heat, some were built for shadows. For most people today, shade is still a problem to fix. Too dark, too cold. Nothing grows there. But you've just seen that some of the easiest food you'll ever grow starts exactly in those places. Lettuce that stays tender and juicy longer in the shade. The leaves stay tender. The flavor stays mild. Spinach that finally stops bolting the moment the heat shows up. Carrots that grow a little slower but come up sweeter and more delicate, and chicory that only shows its best self after you take the light away completely. Maybe the real question isn't how do I get more sun? Maybe it's which plants was this shade made for? If you've got a corner of your yard you've always written off as useless, tell me in the comments what you're tempted to try there now. I want to see how much food we can pull out of the places everyone else has been ignoring.